Hello everyone and welcome to this week's lecture on ISM 416 Natural Language Processing. Now last week we saw how to handle text with Python, right? We looked at basic string operations. Now this week we are going to take it a step further by seeing how to identify patterns in text. Okay, so this week we are going to be looking at regular expressions. Now, regular expression is a special text string for describing a search pattern. What I mean by that is if we have a bunch of text, for instance, and we want to identify some useful information from the text, like the email of an individual, the phone number, the full name of that individual, probably the address of that individual. We can't do that using basic string, okay? So this is where regular expressions come in handy. So let's take, for instance, this string we got from our UN spokesperson that we looked at last week. Now, if you are asked to find the hashtags, that is this one, and the callout from this string, this, how will you do it? Let me give you a second to think. Now, from our experience so far, your answer will probably be, okay, I'm going to define a variable for the string, okay, then I'll split on space, okay, so I will get the individual tokens, that the individual words in the string. Then for me to get the hashtag, I write a for loop, okay, simply say, okay, list all the word if the word in text 11 starts with a hashtag. So this will give you this result, which is correct, okay. Now where the problem lies is if you want to get the call out. Now you simply follow the same procedure by writing a for loop, okay, list all the words in this variable if the word starts with at. But the problem is you have this result, at standing alone. Now it is not enough to say that something starts with an at without following it up, okay. For instance, in Twitter you can have at Charles, at PAU, at Paul, but you can't have at on its own. So this is where regular expression pattern is important. So in regular expression patterns, we write a string that matches a particular item in our text so as to be able to extract them, okay. Now this week we are going to be looking at a data set, fraudulent email corpus. A corpus is simply a data set of text, just like you have a data in your Excel spreadsheet. So once you have a data set that is full of text, we call it corpus, okay. Now this fraudulent email corpus contains thousands of phishing emails, or you can call it 419 emails, okay, that was sent between 1998 to 2007, and they are pretty entertaining to read. So if you have the time, I advise you to go through them and have fun, okay. Now this data set can be gotten from this link here. So but for us, we are going to be uploading the data set on the e-learning portal, so you can forget about going through this process here, okay. Now before we get started, let me show you a glimpse of our data set, okay. So I'm going to show you now. Alright, this is the text file for the fraudulent email, okay, containing thousands of 419 emails that was sent between 1998 to 2007, okay. Now, but working with regular expressions can be very intimidating, especially if you're doing it for the first time. it is for this reason that we decided to work with the first two emails so we understand the concept of regular expressions before going deep into working with big corpus. Okay, so we got the first two emails. This is it. Okay, this is what we are going to be working with, so we called it text email. This is the same thing with the other full corpus, just that this is smaller. This is just the first two email, while the rest contains thousands of email. Okay, now having seen this, the next thing we do is to see how to read this text file in our notebook. Already from our previous classes, you already know how to launch your Jupyter notebook. You simply I showed you different methods to do that. You can decide to use your terminal or your command line by typing Jupyter notebook and it launches, or you can use your search bar and search for Jupyter notebook and launch it. Now when you launch it, it opens on your default browser. Then you navigate to your working directory. Hope you remember all these steps, right? Now another thing you have to take note of is this is our working directory. Like I said, all our codes and our data set will be saved in this folder. So you do well to copy the data set and paste on this folder so as not to have errors when replicating this code. Does this make sense? Alright, now once you've navigated to your working directory, you navigate to this drop down here to open a new Python 3 notebook, which I've done. Okay, okay, so this is working. Give me a minute. Okay, what is happening? All right, now sorry about the delay. Now the next thing we do is to rename our notebook, right? And remember, the topic of this class is going to be on regular expressions. So for us not to have clashing notebooks, it is ideal for us to name our notebook using the topic of the lecture. So I'm going to call this regular. Okay, I'm going to give it a shorthand reg X, which is short for regular expressions. Okay, so the next thing I do is I write a brief comment so I know what I'm actually doing. So, and the comment is going to be how to import my corpus. So I'm simply going to put a hash and say importing the corpus. So like I said, a corpus is simply a data set of text, right? So in the previous lecture, that was last week, towards the end of the lecture, we looked at how to import a text file, right? And how do we do that? We imported the text file using the open function. So we are going to use the same procedure here. So the first thing I do is I'm going to define a variable to hold my corpus here. So I'm going to call the variable fh, which is short for file holder. So, but you can feel free to call yours anything. Now, after defining my variable and using the assignment operator, which is equal to, I use the open function to read my data in. Okay, so I simply say open. Then what am I opening? The corpus. And what is the name of the corpus? It is text underscore emails. Okay, and what is the format? The format is text.txt, so .txt. Now I'm going to specify another parameter here, which is the read only parameter. So this corpus here, I'm not going to alter it, so I'm going to set it as read only. So simply say read only by specifying R here. Does that make sense? Now to read my corpus, I simply use the open method dot read method as we used in the previous lecture. So once you're done with this, you run it. Yeah, my file has imported successfully. Okay, so let's go back to our slides. Okay. All right. Now suppose we want to find out who the emails are from. Okay, so we have bunch of emails, right? So suppose we want to find out who the emails are from. This is what we mean by that. So this is our text data set that we're going to be working with. Okay, this is the body of the mail. Now this is who the mails are from. So you can see it was denoted with from, just like your normal mail, the name of the person and the email of that person enclosed in what's it called, in tags. Okay, so if we want to find out who these email are from, how do we do it? Now the first thing we do, we'll go back to our notebook. The first thing we do is to identify the library or package that we're going to be using in Python to handle regular expressions. So what we mean by library is, a library is simply a collection of functions. Okay, it is open source. In other words, it is built to help individuals navigate or perform some particular tasks without having to write their own functions themselves. Okay, and now Python has a library which is called RE, short for regular expressions, which is used for handling regular expressions, meaning it contains some particular functions which helps us identify patterns in text. Okay, and to import a library in Python, we simply use the import keyword. So we are going to import our RE library like this, import RE. Okay, so when you are done with this, you run it. Now if you want to see the list of functions in your library, what you simply do is you use the dir function, which is short for directory. Okay, so you simply say dir of re, you run it. Okay, this gives you the list of functions in your regular expression library. Now remember the question we asked. Suppose you want to find out the person who sent the mail. Okay, how do you do it? Now if you look at the list of library, you see a library called find all. Okay, now what this find all library does is it scans through your corpus and gives a list of the matching attributes, okay, matching patterns, and gives you those lists. Okay, now like I told you previously, if you don't know how to use a particular function in Python using your Jupyter notebook, you can get help, and I showed you how to get help last week, right? So if you want to use the find all function and you don't know how to use it, what you simply do is you call the library first, which is re, then you put a dot to call the function, which is, in this case, we are looking at find all. Now if you want to get help on how to use this function here, you simply put a question mark in front of it and you run it. So now this is the doc string. This is called a doc string. So it shows you how to use a particular function. Okay, now from here we find out that this find all function takes in majorly two parameters. Majorly three parameters. This is how do I put it? This is optional. Okay, this is not important. So it takes in majorly two parameters. The first one is the pattern. So what we mean by pattern is, if you want to get the people that sent the mail, you need to write a pattern to match those information you want to extract. Then the string here simply means the corpus you want to find this pattern in. So you can see this is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to quickly show you how to get the list of people that send the mail. Then I'll go further to break down all these things for you so you understand the concepts. Okay, so to get that, so I simply say using the find all function. Alright, so for me to get the list of people that send the mail, there are two ways to do it. There are many ways to do it actually. So I'm going to stick with one, then I'll show you the other one as we progress. So the other one you're already used to it, but I'm going to show you again as we progress in this course. So I'll simply write a for loop to do that. So I simply say for. The reason I'm choosing this is because it's easier, okay? So, and it's straightforward. So I simply say for line in re.find all. So the first argument, as we saw previously, is the pattern, okay? So let's go back to our corpus and see. So this is the pattern for getting the people that send the mail, okay? This, to get it, it starts from this from and a full column, okay? So I simply go back to my notebook. Don't worry about this. I'm going to explain the code line by line for you, okay? So I simply say from, put a full column, then it starts with, what this means is that it starts with from, then I want to select every other thing that follows except a new line. Okay, so I use this shorthand here. Like I said, don't worry, I'm going to explain this for you. Then I put a comma here and specify the second parameter, which is our file holder, right? So once I do this, I specify my delimiter, then I print the line. Print line. So when I run this, I have, like I told you previously, we have only 2 emails in that corpus, okay? So these are the list of the people that sent the mail. The first one was from Mr. Ben Suleiman. The second one is from Prince Obong Eleme, okay? Now let's go back to our slide to better understand this stuff I just did, okay? So simply go back to our slide. Okay, like I told you, the find all function takes in majorly 2 parameters, the pattern and the string. The pattern, let me reiterate, is simply what you're trying to find. In this case, we want to find out the people that sent the email, okay? And the string is the document we want to find this pattern in. So in our case, the string here is the file holder, which is the FH, okay? Now, you saw previously that we use some attributes like the from, okay? Now, using this is very useful if you know precisely what started, how the information you're looking for started. So let's look at our couples again so we better understand this. We see that we want to select the people that send the email, and we know that if we look at these informations here, this is the only one that starts from with this from with a full column. So if we want to get this information here, we need to use this as one of the pattern. Okay, but there are some occasions when you don't know how the pattern starts. So it is on this occasion that you use some regular expressions, shorthands, or patterns. Okay, so I'm going to show you on the next slide some basic patterns that account for some of these scenarios. Okay, now I will advise you to pause this video, okay, and get your jotter or your notebook wherever and write these things down, because we are going to be needing them in the next few slides. Okay, so to better understand these regular expressions, it depends on the understanding of all this. Okay, so pause this video and copy out these things while I explain. Now this shorthand here, \W, is used to match alphanumeric characters, which means if you use this, you simply match the alphanumeric characters like A to Z, small a to Z, capital A to Z, from 0 to 9. It also matches underscore and dash. Okay, this is very important. So instead of writing a complex shorthand to get some alphanumeric characters, you can simply use this. Does that make sense? Okay, now the next one we are going to look at is this one, \D. This matches digits. So if you are dealing with numbers, you simply use this. This matches digits, which means from 0 to 9. Okay, now the next one is \S. Okay, this matches white space characters, which includes the tab, okay, that is \T, the new line \N, and the carriage return. Okay, you also matches space character like space. You already know what that means, right? Now if you use the capital X with a \, this matches the opposite of this. So if you want the opposite of this, you simply use this. So this matches non-white space characters. Does that make sense? All right, then the dot here, this is very important because we used it in our example that we just saw. This matches any character except the new line character. This is new line. So if you have, let's assume that this is a sentence. Okay, using dot, we match each of these characters individually except this place where you have the next line. Okay, does that make sense? Now the asterisk here matches 0 or more occurrence. What we mean by that is whatever is on your left, okay, this, if you use asterisk, it matches what is on your left 0 or more times. So it looks for repeating patterns. Okay, we are going to see that clearly as we proceed. Now the plus here matches 1 or more occurrences. Okay, so, and finally the question mark here matches 0 or more occurrence. So all these are very important, but regular expression patterns are not limited to this. There are hundreds of them. Okay, so you can feel free to check them out, but these are the most important ones. All right, now let's look at how to work with these regular expression patterns. So we can start explaining by looking at the dot and asterisk which we used in our previous example to list out the people that sent the email. Okay, now we are going to start simple by looking at the dot first. So we simply go back to our notebook. Now we are going to rewrite this thing again, but we are going to take it step by step. Okay, so we simply say, write the for loop again. For line in regular expression of find or function, find or. Now you already know that this is constant because the information we are trying to find starts with from. Okay, so we simply retain the from there. Okay, so we simply say from, and the full column, it continues with the full column. Now from, like I told you previously, you try to write down the patterns we looked at. Okay, so let's look at our corpus for better understanding. Now this is what we are interested in getting. Okay, it starts with this and other characters follows. Now to match this character, we simply look at the dots, right? We simply say that a dot matches any character except the new line. So using a dot can match all these characters except this new line. So we simply use a dot and see. Where is my notebook? Okay, this is it. So I simply put a dot here. Okay, one dot, just one dot. Then put a comma. Like you already know, this find or function takes in two parameters, the pattern and the string. So our string is still the file holder fh. So I indicate my delimiter. This is called the delimiter, and I print my line. Print line. So you see, what this does is simply prints this from. I trace through our corpus and print this from here. Then this dot here matches one character, which is a space. If you look at our corpus again, after this from, you have a space before you have the name and the email, right? So the one dot there matches just one space there. So let's try to add multiple dots and see what we'll have. Ctrl V. So if you add like 4 more dots, 1 2 3 4, oh yeah, so making 5 dots. Let's run it and see what we'll have. So you see it matches this space, another space, and we have this. But this can be quite tedious if we are working with huge corpus that we don't know where it started and where it ends. Okay, that is where the asterisk comes in. Like you saw from what you've written down, that the asterisk matches 0 or more occurrence. Okay, so if this dot here matches any character except the new line, if you introduce the asterisk here, it's going to match the dot here 0 or more times. So we'll do that and see what we have. In other words, the asterisk looks for repetitions in our line. So we simply delete this. We delete this, have one dot, and put a star here, asterisk here. So, and we have the full information that we need. So let's go back to our slides. Okay, now since the asterisk matches 2 or more instances of a pattern on its left, it means that it is looking for a repeating pattern. So we already know that the star here, the more dots you put, the more character it brings up, right? So if you introduce the asterisk, it matches everything that the dot is supposed to get 0 or more times. So it looks for repeating patterns. Now if you are looking for a repeating pattern in a search, it is called a greedy search. Okay, but if you are not looking for a repeating pattern, we simply call it a non-greedy or lazy search. Okay, now so let's take for instance that we want to find out the names of the individual. Okay, so we go back to our corpus to identify how to find the names of the individuals. So if you look at this, you simply see that for us to get the name, we need to already get the pattern for getting both the name and the email, right? So we'll do that and assign it to a variable called match. So go back to this. We define a variable match. Okay, we say match is equal to everything we did here, just this. Control C, Control V. So we are going to delete this, and we are not going to write a for loop anymore, because we simply say okay, anytime that this is met, you simply save it as match. Okay, so we run this. So this ran successfully. Now the next thing we do is we iterate inside this match to identify the pattern for getting the names. Okay, so for us to do that, we have to look at our corpus again. So you see that the names are enclosed in double quotes. So for us to get this name, we need to use what we call an escape pattern. Okay, for us to escape this quote here and print out the names accurately. So to do that, we simply go back here, put then we write a for loop. We simply say for line in our match. Okay, put a delimiter and simply say you have to print for us, print our re.find all. Now this is also going to take the pattern for getting the name from this match variable here. Remember, the match contains this information here. So for us to get this name, we need to write a pattern for getting just the name. Okay, so we simply use one quote first. Then for us to escape this double quote here that started the name, we use an escape pattern, which is backslash quotes, which is simply a backslash. So we simply say backslash this quote. So anytime this line of code is executed, the function iterates through this information here, and when it comes across this, it will escape the quote. Okay, so you don't have errors. So we simply say backslash quote. Then we want to match every other thing that is here except the new line. So that is where we use the the dot. So you already know what the dot means. Simply matches any character except the new line. Okay, so since the dot only prints character by character, we use the star, the asterisk, to get the full line there. So but since we don't need this, we end it with this escape quote again by simply saying forward, backward quote again. So this should do the work. Then the next thing we do is we specify the second parameter. We specify the second parameter, which is the line now, because we are looking at the lines, all these lines in our match, in everything. So simply say line. So and we run it. So you simply see we get the names of the individuals. Okay, does that make sense? So let's go back to our slide and see if we can explain further. Okay, now this, like I told you initially, this backslash here is an escape pattern. Okay, so without the backslash, this would become two opening quotes, then dot star, and this, which will eventually result in an error. Okay, so for us not to break this script, we simply use this backslash quotation mark here. Okay, now using this shortcut here, like I explained previously, acquires the character in the line. So let's go back to this for you to better understand. So here we use the backslash quote here to escape this first quote. Okay, then we use the dot to get the character, the first. If we had said, okay, without using the asterisk, to use just dot, this is what we get empty list. Okay, now but if we use more dots, we still get empty list. So for us to match all these characters here, we simply use the asterisk. Okay, so we simply use asterisk and we run it, so we get our result. Does that make sense? Okay, all right, let's go back to our slide. Now what if we want to get the email? This could seem a bit complex, but it is not. So we are going to take it step by step. Remember, this video is simply a complement for this lecture slide. So it is very important for you to go through these slides, try to understand them. They are very detailed as usual, so and you are going to enjoy reading the slides. Okay, so let's go back to our notebook and learn how to get email from our corpus. Okay, so first of all, we'll look at our corpus first and see where the email lies. So this is it. So remember, this starts from this. Okay, and this is the email. So anything we want to do, if we want to get the email, we need to first identify this pattern here and store it somewhere. So simply go back to our notebook. So I'll simply say, write a comment, getting the email. Please always form the habit of writing comment. It is very important, so you don't confuse yourself on what you've been doing previously. So remember, you can write a comment here which states getting the name, right? Okay, so simply say getting the email. So I'm going to make this very easy for all of us. So we're going to take it step by step until we get the full pattern for getting the email. Okay, so what I simply do is I declare a variable for holding this item here. So I simply say match. I can call it match. Feel free to call yours any other thing. So I simply say match is equal to our regular expression library re dot the function we are still using is define all. Find all. So since we are dealing with the first pattern, we already saw how to do it. To simply say from, that's what the information started with, from. Then we want to match all the other characters except the new line, so we simply say dot star here. And since the find all function takes in two parameters, we specify the second parameter as our file holder document. Okay, so we run this. Now we want to start by getting the email. So like I told you previously, we are going to take it step by step. We are going to be interchanging this screen and the couple string for you to better understand what we're doing. Okay, so we simply write a for loop first for line, because we're looking at the line here, this line here. So for line in our match, which is our variable, our match, okay, specify the delimiter. We want to print, okay, we want to print the result of the search. So like I told you, the find all function simply iterates through your corpus and extract the patterns you're looking for and print it as a list like we just saw. So simply say re.find all. So we are going to take it step by step to identify the pattern. So this is the email. I hope it's bold enough. Should I go to our corpus and see? Okay, this is the email here that we want. So how do you identify this pattern? Okay, for a first timer, this could be a tedious task to do, but it's very easy if you take it simple. Now, for you to better understand the concept of data science, natural language processing, or any other application of data science, it is important for you not to cram. Okay, all the information you need are either on your IDE or you can get it on Google. What you simply need to do is to have the problem solving skill. Okay, every other thing you need is out there. Okay, the only thing you just need to do is to be innovative enough to use those available resources. Okay, so once to identify this, right, we'll go back to our notebook. Okay, so the first pattern we are going to look at is, first of all, aside from all this stuff that are here in this line, the only one that contains alphanumeric value is this one. So we can simply say find everything that contains alphanumeric value. Now, how do you identify, what do you use as a shortcut for getting the alphanumeric value? Correct, the \w, right, which we saw previously and which I also asked you to write down so we don't get stuck, okay, as we progress. So we simply say find all, everything that contains \w, okay, in this line, in all this line. So we simply say comma line. So So if we do this, we have a bunch of rubbish here, right? We have the from this, which is very unimportant. So the next thing we do is we understand that finding everything that contains alphanumeric is not enough. Okay, we need to also look closer to see if there's any other thing we can add. So the next thing we observe here is that distance doesn't contain any space, right? So there is no need for, and the opposite of not containing a space is what? The opposite of containing a space is what? Backslash big S, right? So we introduce big S here, backslash big S. So simply what this says, okay, extract for us any alphanumeric character without space. Okay, let's run this and see. So this is coming together, right? Now the next thing we need to do is we specify, because this is breaking, isn't it? So we have to do a greedy search that will look for a repeating pattern of this thing on the left, right? And how do we do a greedy search? We do it using the asterisk, you remember. So by the time we introduce an asterisk here and we run it, so we see things are coming up, right? Now, but we still have some unimportant words here, right? So what do we do next? We simply say, okay, now this is okay for me, but I also need the one that contains the at here. Okay, so you simply put at, shift at, and you run it. Sorry, after the asterisk, put at here and you run it. So if you run it, you have just this beginning, isn't it? Which is pretty awesome, right? Now the next thing we do is we also identify some pattern. How do we extract, how do we get the rest? Okay, so let me give you a second to think. Good. Now if you follow this class closely, you understand that we looked at different regular expression patterns, right? And the one that best captures this is the dot pattern, isn't it? Because the dot matches each characters except the new line, isn't it? So it is going to be cool if we simply add a dot here and we run it. So when we added a dot, you simply see that S is being added because one single dot matched just one character in our string. So how do we capture the rest? Of course, we'll do a greedy search again by simply introducing the asterisk, isn't it? So we simply say asterisk, okay, then we run it. Wow, this is cool, but this is not all. Okay, the reason it is not all is because we still have the HTML tag here, these tags. So how do we remove it? Now to remove this is very easy. You understand that from the patterns we wrote down, we have some patterns like the /W, which only match alphanumeric characters, isn't it? So is this tag here an alphanumeric character? The answer is no. So for us to remove this, we simply introduce the /W. So and we run it. and we get our full email. This is cool, right? So feel free to pause the video and reward this to follow the step. Now, for any work you're doing that involves email, if you are working with text data that involves email and you want to extract the email, you simply use this pattern. It works everywhere. Okay, does that make sense? Good. So let's go back to our slides and see what else we have. Okay, so in the slide we walk through what we just saw, so feel free to check out the slides. They are very detailed. Okay, we did everything line by line. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to look at, let me look at how much time we have left. Okay, how much time do we have left? Okay, so we have few times left. Okay, so let's quickly round up. Now so far we've looked at the find all function, which is very important, right? But the find all function is not the only inbuilt function in the regular expression, as we saw in our dir. So we had other built-in functions like the sub function, which is used to replace an item in a bunch of text. For instance, somebody submitted a wrong email, okay, and later at the end of the show the person comes to you and say, hey, I'm very sorry, I submitted the wrong email, can I submit the correct one now? So instead of going through thousands of text to figure out, okay, this is your mail, let me change it, you simply use the sub function to replace automatically. Does that make sense? So we also have the match, we have the full match, we have the find eta, find all, escape, error, and many others. But the most popular ones are the ones we are going to look at right now. So we are going to look at the search function briefly, and we also look at the split function very briefly. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. Now, of course, so far you've understood that the find all function matches all instances of a pattern in a string, okay, and return them in a list, isn't it? So for instance, as we saw previously, we wrote a pattern to get the email, the phone number of an individual, right? So we use find all to iterate through our corpus and extract those useful information, whereas the search function simply matches the first instance of the pattern in the string. So if you want to search for email and you use the search function, what it simply does is it iterates through your corpus and gives you the first instance, that the first appearance of an email address, and returns them in a regular expression match. Okay, it tells you, okay, this matches this in so and so lines and stuff, and list it for you. Okay, so let's quickly look at how the search works. Okay, so we'll simply go back to our notebook. Okay, so this is our notebook now. So if you want to get help on how to use search, just like we did on the find all, you simply use the question mark, right? You simply say re dot search, okay, search, then you put a question mark here and you run it. So it shows you that this takes the same parameter as the find all, okay, but the where the find all lists out the important information for you, the search all simply matches the first occurrence. So let's try to do exactly what we did using the find all and see what we have. So we'll simply say match now, match is equal to re dot search now, so instead of find all now, and we use the pattern, that's sorry, so we use the pattern from full column just like we did in the previous example, then in our file holder. So, and we want to match the email, okay, so we can simply copy. Which one is easier, the email or the name? Let's use the email, so we can simply copy just to save time. Simply say copy, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. So for line in this match, we want to print the search. Okay, so search of this, so we'll run it. So while it takes time, we'll go back to our slide and see what else we have. So we'll quickly run through everything we need to do and move ahead with our life. Okay, so you see taking time. Okay, all right, okay, yeah, now we can simply print the search. Okay, so what we simply do is we work with what we have here to see if these patterns are met. Okay, so what we simply do, instead of printing it, we simply say print for us match. Okay, so we'll see what the match is. So we simply see that the match, it iterates through this and simply brings out this match for us, that this is located in so and so position, and this is what it brought out. Okay, so for you to view this string here, you simply use the group method in the match. Okay, so for us to see this string here, we simply say print for us match dot group. We use the group method. So this group method simply converts this match object here into string. Okay, so we'll run it and see. So this is it. We have our group function here, our string here. So if you want to continue to finding out the email, you simply work from it from here, but this is not really necessary because the search function simply shows you whether a pattern exists in your corpus. It doesn't list all the patterns that exist. Okay, so let's go back to our slides. All right, so the next one we look at is how to use the split function. So look at this simple example here. Suppose we need a quick way to get the domain name of the email addresses. We could do that using regular expression of operations, which is this regular expression dot split. Okay, so let's go back to our our notebook and see how to implement that. Okay, so we simply write a comment here. We should have indicated a comment on using the search function, so we can still do that here. So simply say using the search function. So now to use the split function, so simply say using the split function. So we simply say the first thing we need to do is, since our objective is to get the domain name and the username, right? We get the domain name and the email address, right? So we simply assign this pattern here to a new variable called address. Okay, so we simply say address is equal to re dot find all. So we want to find all everything that started with from, followed by a quote, a full column, then we want to match everything on the left in our file holder. Now the next thing we do is we iterate through this address here for us to get the domain name and the email address. So simply iterate through it by writing a for loop saying for the line in our address put a full column, then we write another for loop. Now this for loop is simply to copy this result here. Okay, to copy this result here and paste. So simply write a for loop. Why is this taking so long? Okay, so simply say for the line in this result. Okay, so for line in the re dot find all everything that matches the email. So to save us time, I'm simply going to copy this, so paste here. So everything that matches the email address, okay, in the item. So here is okay, we can use, so we don't have we can use item here, so we don't have two conflicting lines here. So simply say comma item, okay, then we specify a delimiter also. Now the last few things we're going to do is this line here gives us this following result, isn't it? So if we want to split this result, we have two values. We have the domain name and the email address, isn't it? So we simply specify the two variables, username and the domain name. So we simply say domain underscore name. So this is going to be the place where we use the split function. Now we simply say re dot split, just like we use split function in our previous lecture, right, to split a string into tokens. So that is what we are doing here too. So we simply say split for us any place you see at. Okay, this is the pattern we are going to use in this line. So simply say line. So once we do that, we run. Okay, we are having error here. Oh, for line in, we should say in this. So we'll run it again. So this runs successfully. Now, how do we print out the username and the domain name? It's very simple. We can use the print format method. So simply say print for us. Okay, specify quotes, then you open a curly bracket, comma, open another one, then you simply say dot format username, comma, and domain name. So this should do. So when we run it, we have the username and the domain name. Does that make sense? Good. All right, now let's go back to our slide and see if everything is working very well. Okay, good. Now let's recap what we've done previously, so we have a clear idea of what we did today. So the first thing we did was to understand what regular expressions is. Okay, we understood that regular expression is used to identify patterns in text. Okay, then we went further to see some of the limitations of using string operations that we used in our previous lecture. Okay, then we continued by looking at some of the patterns in regular expressions, like the alphanumeric, the one that matches the alphanumeric character, digits, and others. Okay, then we continued by looking at how to find all the information from the people that sent the email address from a corpus. Okay, so and we took it step by step to arrive at the full pattern for the string. Okay, then we continued by looking at how to get the name. We derived the pattern for getting the name from the corpus. Then we added by getting the pattern for the email addresses of the people that sent the email, right? So then we continued by looking at how to use other common functions in regular expression, like the search and the split. Okay, does that make sense? Good. Now for practice sake, you can decide to identify some other patterns in this text, like to get the person that received the email. Okay, it is pretty straightforward. If you want to get the message ID or the return path, so you can try to do this on your own, and if you encounter any challenges, you do well to let us know. And until we meet again, enjoy natural language processing and stay safe.